Welcome back, faithful viewer. This is HourTwo of Day 2 of Nebulous Live Development. In the last video, I was working on setting up the scanning system to accurately calculate price, the cost of the scan, and to properly update the UI output. I got to a pretty solid point. Whoops, actually, let me start my timer. Okay. I got to a pretty solid point where it was accurately calculating it as I intended. It was blocking the button from being pressed if it cost too much. But there was an issue with the formatting. So it was formatting it with way too many decimal points, and that's not what I'm looking for. When I select a scan value, I want it to just do that. I want it to not revert itself using a floating point. It's really tacky when there's a bunch of floating points like that. So my idea for this, it was already half working and I thought it wasn't, was to just cast it to an integer. And I think the reason it wasn't working was because I've got to also set this to an integer. Okay. So I'm going to take a quick look here at where I have this set up here. So I have it in 4 places. So I'm simply going to come to the beginning of this in all of these, and I'm going to do the int cast. And if I do this, I do believe it is going to no longer do that. It should no longer have those janky floats. So let's see here. Alright, sweet. So even though the total cost is a floating point, the output's not a floating point. Okay, so here's something that what the heck? Now it's happening. Janky. What the heck? So not there, but I must have forgotten it. I did, okay. Can fix that pretty quickly. I know there's for some reason it's not recommended to cast too often, but it's not happening in the update loop, I don't think. Or I don't think it's happening that often for it to matter too much. We'll have to see in the long run though if it makes a difference. Okay, so now it should work. Alright, so what I'm kind of figuring, okay, so excuse me real quick. Alright, so man, design decisions. If the player is bumping their cost up pretty high like this, they're not sure how high it is, how much higher it is. So I am debating on making it negative as a form of feedback. So if they try to max it out, they can see just how much they're overshooting their economy. Which works against a little bit of what I did last time, but it seems like it's going to be a good idea to do that. So I'm going to come in here, and the whole idea was that we were not going to let it go negative. However, if I let it go negative, the player can see how hard they're overshooting their available economy. So I've got to consider how I'm going to do this. We are going to basically just check. I guess basically what's going to happen is So this is still accurate. I guess it's all just going to be the same, but we are in fact going to, instead of hard coding this to 0, we're just going to put the basically just put this here. And it's going to result in a negative value. So they can see how far off they are from their scan, which is more of just a courtesy thing for the player. And it will... The other cool thing would be to like make the text red, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then there's one other thing I should check, which is if I'm iterating the player economy, does it... So the total economy and the total cost of the active scan is greater than or equal to 0, enable the button. And then displayed total economy will gain a value, which was getting set here? Yes, it was. All right, so I think this is going to work. If I can sort this part out, so let's see here. Let's say we have a scan and an arc, and we start to raise the cost, and then it does go negative. So now they can see that like they can get the scan off if they just wait a second. But if they like try to do a maximum scan, then they're gonna have to wait a while. So then they can decide, oh well, you know, I'm gonna jank down the angle and jank down the frequency, but I want the range to stay the same, and then they can run a scan. So that's functionally what I want. And it just makes sense to have it makes sense for the numbers to be red in that instance. It's just a subtlety that the player feels like it's a subtlety that the player will subconsciously respect. So if I come in here and take a look at how I would actually do that, let's see here. So let's see, economy tally dot text, and then can I say like dot color, dot style maybe, economy tally dot style. And then there's like text color. Let's see here, I'm not sure about this actually. There isn't actually a text color. Okay, so then we're looking at the style. And we're looking at the background color. If we just took color in. Text outline color. I guess it's the, let's see here. Okay, so this is the text color. So we're just gonna say this is color.red. And we're gonna put that in to these other positions also. And in the event the economy is active again, then we essentially just have to, oops, put this in the wrong spot. Here's a case in point where a function might actually be a little useful. So we come in here, we can just say economy tally dot style dot color equals color dot white in this instance. So white red, white red, white red, white red, and then when the economy iterates, if the economy is back to being, actually hold on. Basically just the same thing here. Wait, this isn't correct, is it? So the total economy buffs, the displayed economy buffs, the displayed economy outputs, but then it's conditional on if the player data.displayed total economy is greater than or equal to 0. So if it winds up being greater than or equal to 0 at this point, then what we want to do is change the text back to white. And I think that will actually sate my anxiety on that particular feedback. So I'll give it a shot here and see what happens. Sometimes when you override styles using the UI builder, it like overwrites other styles. So I'm gonna see how this works or not. So let's see, like increase the price. Yeah, it's like the range alone is not a big deal. It's kind of interesting. The radius, I would imagine that would increase, or I would imagine that would increase it by a little bit more than that. So I think the issue here is that it's not from 0 to 360, it's from 0 to 10. I think that's what the issue is. So if I increase this though, I just maximize it. Okay, good. So now the player can just has a nice little feedback that they're spending too much on the scan. So that makes sense. Okay, so with a little bit of UI work done, overall there is still some issues with the UX. And that's simply the fact that like the player doesn't have any idea what these are actually. So prototypically it's like I can understand what they are, but I don't have any way for the player doesn't exactly know what these do. However, for the first two, there's a way where if I select this and then increase the range to like 5 and then increase the arc to max, and we'll just say that's like 360 in a range of like 3, and we'll just say it's like a frequency of 1 or something. Essentially, the idea is that a game object ring spawns around this. So then if I start to change the radius like this, it will respond in the game, and then if I change the angle, it will change it in the game also. And that'll kind of give the player an idea of what these do. But there's a good shot I'm going to have to put some labels here, which I would rather not do. Maybe iconography would be better. The other thing is that this needs to be a double slider. So if the player wants a max circle, they can basically do the double slider to the left and to the right, and that just counts as 360. If they want to do like a 180 angle, they can put the slider at 0 and then put the second half at 180, and then they can grab the middle and like move the double slider. And that will actually make like a I'm forgetting what the name of that shape is, but the shape will be able to like turn in real time. So the player is going to be able to have some visual feedback for what these do, which is where an icon might serve better than using text. And as for frequency, there might be some visual feedback, but the visual feedback for that would happen once the scan is launched, because like the wave that gets shot out will wave with a higher amplitude if the frequency is higher or something like that. So I'm not sure how to proceed with that then, because I guess the first thing I can do is just try and set up the other thing is like, I guess if it could say 0 on these sides and the max on these sides, and then as the player buffs their capacities, those will actually go up. And then being able to grab the scanner, or being able to set up the double scanner, and then having it actually update in-game would be very important. So that's like 4 or 5 things that has to happen. And then, man, I'm being sticklered on the UX. I'm being sticklered on like it being obvious what these are. So it's coming to mind as like icons, basically, little pixel arts to like. Okay, so another thing that I'm thinking of is that. Oh. Okay, I guess that's handled in this. Okay, so I'm actually going to come in here real quick and open up the UI, get down to the active scanning elements. I'm going to check the angle element, and I'm going to, let me see if there's is there a scan, or is there a slider for, there is a MinMax slider. So I actually have to use that instead of what I'm using. So I'm going to yank this out and drag this down for a sec so I can grab this MinMax slider. I'm going to drop this MinMax slider in here where this was at. Then I'm going to call this, it's still the same thing, it's still active scanning angle. And then mess up the formatting, of course, but we'll yank out the label. And then it's a little lame that the colors are off like this. So let me take a look here. Did I... Okay, so the text doesn't matter. The background is just black. So I guess I can shift this background to black. Okay, so that's better. And then the max value, of course, is, of course... Oh, the limit. Okay, so the low limit is 0. And the high limit is 360. And then the min value is 0, and the max value is 0. Start. Okay, pretty cool. And then jump out here, and that's going to change a couple things in some of the code now. So I'm going to jump back in to the active scanning element. Oh, I'm actually first going to take a look in-game how it looks. And, okay, so that's fine. So let me click play mode. And there's going to be a little bit of brokenness with the... fact that it's going to be a little different. But I can, in fact, go like this and do this, which is exactly what I want. So the idea is that, like, you can, you know, this is a maximum scan of 360. And if you go like this, it's like 180. And then you can just kind of scan in a rough 180 around your planet or whatever, which works pretty good. And the cool thing is that if you go like this, and say radius is here or whatever, once you do this, and you start increasing this, it will actually project a wave, or it'll project a cone out, or not a cone, I'm forgetting what the shape is, like a triangle basically. And then it will increase as you increase this. So when it's like this, it'll be like maybe from here to here, back. But as you start to increase this, it's going to increase the arc from nothing to full circle. And then you can shift it around, so I think that's pretty good. Once I get the visual feedback set up. And I'm pretty sure it's complaining because we changed the type of the element. So we're not looking for a... This is no longer a slider alone, it's a... What is it? A min-max... It's a min-max slider. The hyphen, so this is in fact it is just min-max slider. So we are going to change this, I guess that's it, just min-max slider. Now it should actually find it, but, oh, well actually, hold on, so Not sure what it's thinking about. So we've got the scanning angle value is not exactly the same. Because now what we have is the difference between the high and low value, which is actually what's going to determine the cost. So we've got, so let me see here, value has, I'm not sure about that anymore, because it's no longer a singular value. So, let me see, I'm actually familiar with this. It's got a min, max, a low, and a high. So basically you subtract max from min value to get your value. However, it's not showing me a there isn't a minimum value option. It's a little weird. I think it probably has to do with the type of event. Like I'm not sure here. I guess this does work, okay. So now we can say value min value new value new value dot min max value. So we're gonna have to say value new value min max value. But okay, so scanning angle value is in fact value new value max value minus value new value min value. And this will calculate the total amount of 360 that the player is asking for. So this is actually going to help throw up the cost of large scans, essentially. And scanning, so that's how that works. The player can change that by changing the min-max and sliding the range. And essentially, that, oh, and does that mean I don't have to divide by 360 anymore? So I've got if the new value is just like, no, and I still want to divide by 360 because that creates the value that reduces 360. So 36, if the angle is 36, and you divide that by 360, then you're looking at a 1/10 of the full circle, of the area of the full circle. Okay, so that's pretty cool. That's an interesting mechanic for how the game works. Once I get the visual feedback ring, that would be really cool. So now we're looking at, what was the other thing I was looking at? I was wondering about I was trying to consider, I kind of lost my train of thought here. set up that scan. Oh, I guess I could just. I guess what I'm considering is adding labels, or MinMax. The other thing that would be cool is to add a maybe like a way to tick these, so like you could fine adjust them, but I don't think that's going to matter. So I guess what it's coming down to would be putting the mins and maxes on both sides. Or a visual output. Like I'm feeling like it could use a visual output for the value the player has selected. For that, we would have to essentially come in here and we'll have to create 3 new visual elements. And those visual elements will have to have a label. Or I guess the first thing is going to have to be the visual elements themselves. And then we will have to place the actual values inside of the elements. And then we will have to place text labels in front of each of them. And then we will have to align them properly to actually be in front of them. And then it actually broke the button, or it put the button in the wrong spot, so I can drag that back down here. And then so we can say active scanning radius total. And this visual element has to be aligned or flexed from left to right. And now the label will go in the front. And then the label needs to be formatted just a little bit, so we'll make the background black and the text white. Even though the colors are a little funky. And then the label itself will not be it's not going to be a word, it's going to be a number, so it'll just be like 0. And it's a little weird because it still gives it a little bit more feedback for the player though. So let's jump down here and do the same thing. This is the active scanning angle total. And it's the same thing, we need to flex it from left to right. Although that actually broke it a little bit. And I think that's because this has a... actually, it's a little weird here. Okay, so let me flex this one. And that one broke a little bit also. Zero. 0. There's a black background. And there's an image tint. Does that do anything here? Not sure. So 0, 0 with black background of black, and a text color of white. And then I've got to fix these. Oh, I had to name this one to... Oops. Sorry. Active scanning frequency total. And we have this total set up, but we have to flex these out properly. So the angle here, not sure why it jinked up on me, but we will set the background color to black, which I already did that. So it's just that it's not flexing correctly. So it's good to the radius. And let me check, what is its flex set to? It is set to grow 1. That's just it, basically. So set this to 1. Okay, sweet. And then set this to 1 also. And okay, awesome. So it wasn't so bad. So now let's save this and see how it actually looks. And that text is black. And then the other thing that would be cool is like do the same thing on the other side to denote a maximum value that the player can pick, basically. So that way they have an idea of how much they have a rough. Because they don't know exactly how much it's going to be changing things. It will depend on the feedback in game though. So let's see if I click play mode. And then I select the planet. It's alright, I might raise the font size just a little bit. And then... Okay, so let's grab the total. Make it like 16. And it's a little weird, but I think it'll be okay. So the only other thing I could think of would be have 3 numbers on this side to denote the maximums. Which almost begs for this to have like, for this to be a range where it says like 30 to 60 or something. And then when you shift it, it changes. So I guess what you could do is you can change it up to like 180 and then you can shift it around, you know what you're up to. And then I still feel like having the max on this side is going to work, so I'm going to essentially do the same thing here and just add labels to the other side of these, I think. As long as I'm not nesting them in properly. I have to go through the... This is one reason I like to open this up all the way, because it gives you a little bit more working space. So I can come over here and I'm going to have to change the label also. So active scanning radius max. Active scanning angle max. Which that never changes, it's always 360. And then active scanning frequency max. And then change their labels to be 0 for display purposes, but on initialization, oh, this one can just be 360 by default. And this one 0, but it goes up as the player invests in their ability to scan more. So now we're looking at, okay, and then we have to also set up the text to be white all the way and have a black background. And wash, rinse, repeat for this part. So background black, text white. And then I feel like that will help with in general feedback. The size of the text is down, so I guess we could do that too while we're here. And say the text font size is like 16. 16, 16, 16. Save it and take a look at what we've got. Okay, so it looks like this basically. And it's gonna scale funky, I think. So if we come in here and scale it up, it doesn't have the max, it doesn't have the responsiveness just quite yet, but it's moving in the right direction. In the long run, it would be nice to, the idea is to put in the text system something the player can research that will allow them to, instead of having to like, whoops, every once in a while that happens. It's kind of strange. If you click off of the UI just correctly, it deselects it. So if you like, the idea would be to, instead of the player having to like micro adjust this all the time, there's a tech they can invest in that will eventually assist them in pointing it in the correct direction and putting the proper range in, and even possibly putting in the right frequency. So quote unquote an auto scan. To start though, it'd be cool if like the player could just do like a radial scan like this, and the idea is that they could just like do a cheap maximal scan that just finds stuff. It doesn't actually scan it all down all the way to where you could warp to it, but the idea is you could do like a big radial scan like this and do the scan, and then you can get a rough idea of what's up. And then once you find something, like if there's something like over here, you could essentially click on it. And then if you're scanning and you push like control click or something, it would effectively adjust to an optimal angle to point at it. And it could like optimize the everything it needs. So that's something that's on the table. As opposed to making the player very tediously have to like micro adjust this. The micro adjustment exists for player choice, and it also makes sense that the player would have to invest in technology to do that, is another part of it. It's a little lame how this is. I'm actually thinking about just removing this one because it's self-explanatory that this goes from 0 to 360. Or is it? I think if you max it out like this, you'd know it's 360, so like I think the player has somewhat of an idea of how that works. I'm actually thinking about removing that. So I'm just going to give that a shot here. Alright, let's see if I can just like turn it off or something. I guess not. Alright, so I'm just gonna yank it out. And that'll make it a little smoother in that regard. Alright, so now that that's done, we've got to hook up the change in the numbers that we've written, and we need to after that we've got to actually make it to where the player can see the scanning object in the game. So let's see here. We are going to take a look at, probably we're going to just wind up doing this inside of our active scanning elements again. And what we're going to do is we're going to have to query for all of the like everything. We're just going to have to query for all the elements we created just now. So we've got the root, we have the active scanning elements, then we've got the button, and we've got the sliders down here. But what we are really looking for now is we're effectively looking for 3 labels, right? So label, and it was active scanning radius total, active scanning radius max, active scanning angle total, and then active scanning frequency total and active scanning frequency max. And it's not as big of a deal if they're spelled correctly here, but they have to be spelled correctly in the next part. So all of these are going to have to take in a query. Whoops. That will allow me to click in the right spot. So all of these equal root.q label some string. And the string is basically active scanning radius total, active scanning radius max, active scanning angle total, active scanning frequency total, and then active scanning frequency max. And we can initialize the max values using whatever the max values currently are and they can update as the player invests in that particular part of the economy. And then the totals update anytime the totals update here, actually. So we can start this part pretty simple. And we can okay, so if the value changes, scanning radius value, new value. So I think it's pretty simple. We can just say active scanning radius total dot text equals. And it's another one of those instances where we essentially just want to cast it to an integer. So int, same thing like this. So the integer of the value, new value, to string. Because we don't want a janky floating point. So then we can do the same thing down here. So active scanning angle total equals integer of, oh whoops, I've screwed that up. This is supposed to be minus. And we'll just do scanning angle value in this instance so we don't have to rewrite the subtraction part. And do it to string. And then, oh. Okay. And lastly, we've got the, so what scanning, active scanning frequency total dot text equals integer value, new value. To string. Okay. Start with this. And let's see what happens. So I select the scannable, and if I increase this range, it should in fact, oh it is, okay. So it's working. However, it might not hurt to like have like one decimal point, because it looks like it's non-responsive. So the player does this and they're like, but then it actually is working. So that's a maybe. Here, we can actually increase the angle if I go like this. Oh, it's not working. So that one's not working properly. And then here that's working, so I'm messing up something in this one. So now I'm getting this idea that it's almost begging to be typed into. Like there's gonna be somebody who wants to like click this and type in an exact number. Is the thought I just had. Which I get it, that makes some sense, but it's just not as interactable. I don't think it's as interesting interactively speaking. But there may be a point where like they want a specific value, so I'm not sure. It kind of depends on how good the automated system becomes, which would make a lot of this kind of irrelevant. It depends though on playstyle and diversity and all that stuff. So let's take a look at why this isn't working here. Active scanning angle total, is that correct? Let's see if I spelled it incorrectly in here. Active scanning angle total. No, that's correct. Active scanning angle total. So it's spelled correctly. Active scanning angle total. Active scanning angle total. So basically, it looks like it's very likely I'm just typing this part here incorrectly, but let's see if I can substitute this. Oh. So they go like this. I don't know if that's going to work though. So if this doesn't work, I'm just going to have to use the debugger to see what I'm messing up. Alright, so for some reason this isn't working. Alright, it's debugger time. So why is this part not working right here? Yeah, give it a second every once in a while to recompile. And let's see what happens. So the only thing I can imagine is that it's not reading in the new like value from changing this part. So they go like this, and then go like this. It's just not activating at all. It's kind of weird. Okay, I'm gonna have to study this. I'm just not super familiar with this change event thing. Okay, so let's see, Unity 3D UI toolkit. And what was it was like a change event. Okay. So I'm not sure though what kind of types go in here. Okay. So I need to look up like change event for MinMax Slider. So it's a vector 2. That's what it's implying here, so let's give that a shot. So we go back in here. Instead of saying change event MinMax Slider, we're going to say change event vector 2. And this should actually change this to where I can say value dot I guess it's the new value still dot x or something. So let's try this. So I guess we're going to assume that y is the second part of this, and x is the first part. We're going to go like this, and then from here it's the same thing. We want to go back to just using the scanning angle value. And so now it's still running the debugger. Cool. So let's reset. And let's see if this works properly. So the x and y changes if I go like this. So is it going to work or? Okay, sweet. So now it's actually triggering. So the vector 2 showed up. So the y is 4.5 and the x is 0, so that's correct. And then it's just going to trunk this down. Or there might be a round. There might be a float.round2 thing that I could use that might be better for this. I'll have to consider that. Okay, but it looks like it's going to work now, so I'm going to close this. And it should actually update the value. Whoops. Okay, sweet. Yeah, it's actually working. So now we can see, whoops. We can see that the angle is like, it's lame how that's doing that. That's lame. But, so the angle is like 224, and if you want to make it like 270, you can go like that, and then you have like a 3/4 circle or whatever going around. And if you want to change it to like 90, and you want to do a scan with fourths, then you can do it with fourths. Man, but this part's lame here. So I'm thinking about, it's just lame how it's janking that up like that. But it is working. And let me see here. Total cost of the scan is going up properly now. And now because of the area that we've increased, or now that we're properly increasing the area, the cost goes way up. And it goes way up if you're really bumping it. So that's much more accurate. So that's where the player would need to like strategically scan sectors or something at lower frequencies like this. Something like that. And that gives players some solid player decision. Okay, so the problem here is that I almost want like a completely separate group for these because I don't want them. I want their size to increase to their left, not smush to the right. Super nuanced. Super nuanced. I know it's super nuanced. But it's a piece of the puzzle. So let me see if there's a way to do that. So I'm looking at the total value here. flex. I don't know if that's going to do it or not. No wrap, wrap reverse. I don't think that's going to do it either, but it might. Alignment. Size, margin padding, text. Wrap. No wrap, normal. Has a left alignment. Maybe a right, maybe if I right align it, it will do better. Okay, let's see if this works actually. That might be just good enough. Oh, there's the end slider too. If you wanted to, actually, that end slider would make it to where it's that might actually work. I'll have to consider that. Okay, so now we're in game mode and we select our planet. Oh, it's not updating my UI all of a sudden. What the heck? All of a sudden my economy tally is like not working. Okay, so that was just a weird loading bug or whatever. Okay, so now if I increase this, is it going to expand to the right? Ah, nope. Dang it. It's still scrunching itself inside of the element. Dang it. Alright, well I'm thinking about just leaving it as is for now because it's going to require it's kind of going to require a redesign of how the UI works. It's going to cause the same problem though here and here. I mean, I get what's happening. It's all scrunched into a box, so it's smushing everything inside the box, and it's not expanding the box itself to squeeze these in here. So that's something I'm gonna have to think about for a while because I'm not actually super familiar with being like I'm not super good. Whoops, hold on. I'm just not super great with like the flex layout system. I'm not like a master of it. So that's something I'm going to have to work on. Alright, so we've hit an hour on this particular video. I mostly just messed around with like making the UI look different. And I messed around with providing some visual feedback for the player. I added the dual range here though, which is pretty good. And the economy value scales negatively now, and it's also it's a red when it's negative. And I didn't manage to hook these up yet, but I'm gonna hook these up next time. And I'm probably just gonna leave them janky, where they scrunch everything for now, because I really don't feel like I have to like completely reorganize the hierarchy here, or I have to figure out how to overflow these differently, and I'm not sure exactly how to do that. There might be a way where I can just manually expand these out some, and that might work. So I'll have to play around with it and see what I can do. But for now, this is going to be the end of this video, and thank you if you've watched it up to this point. I'll see you in the next one.